Our southern weather is unpredictable.
We know you've seen a thing or two.
Like heavy rainstorms, extreme heat, and flying debris.
Your New South windows are custom built for your home and designed for extreme conditions.
That's why you need New South by your side.
Enjoy comfort,
Safety, and security.
We install peace of mind with our lifetime guarantee. Superior Windows, factory direct.
New South proud.
Buy more, save more. Volume discounts on 4 or more windows.
Time, weather, and always. How you doing, everybody? I'm Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips. Heat's still the hot topic of weather conversation, right? Just smashed the previous record for rainfall in Tampa. Still a very nice day. We've got some clouds out there, even a couple of sprinkles as another front rolls through the area. Most of us wake up to sunshine and then very warm temperatures in the afternoon. Our temperatures, they're going up and they're staying up. Really nice forecast, especially if you're planning on going to the beach or the pool. Rain chances very slim. Another beautiful day in store. It's going to bring us a very high chance of storms. Isolated showers across the area. Mother Nature likes to remind us that it isn't set by a calendar. We are always on it for you, just in case things begin to pop.
Streaming from the ABC Action Weather Center in Studio A, this is Denis Phillips Live.
Sponsored by New South Window Solutions. Made in Florida for Florida homes by Florida workers.
How you doing, everybody? Tuesday night edition of Denis Phillips Live. Got the Diet Dr. Pepper ready to roll. We have got a lot to talk about. Obviously, Hurricane Lee eventually impacting the New England coast, the northeast coastline. I still believe from the Jersey Shore all the way up to Maine. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what else is going on, what will eventually become Nigel, more than likely, way out in the far tropical Atlantic. And the long-range forecast, 1 to 2 weeks down the road, some of the indicators are the Gulf may start to get active again. So we do have a lot going on. Boy, how about the rain last night? Polk County had about 6 inches of rain in some areas in about 3 hours. It was really, really coming down. So we normally do our hellos this time of the show, but because anytime we have over 1,000 folks and then some on our streaming app, I know there's a lot of folks who are new. I'm guessing there's a chunk of people here from the Northeast watching because, you have what's going on coming your way. So I will just warn you, I have a tendency to go on tangents like the dog and up squirrel. I mean, I definitely go in opposite directions, but if you hang in, I promise you, you will get all the information you so desire. We are going to go ahead and start, and because there's a lot of folks up north that know nor'easters. I mean, you guys know your nor'easters. Now, I lived in Providence, Rhode Island for 6 months, but I was there when Hurricane Bob hit. I did some live shots out in Bob and remember it very well. And I got a little glimpse of how New England folks handle tropical systems. They're kind of like Floridians in a lot of ways, where they're like, it's just a little breeze, we're okay. Now, there's a lot of folks that feel that way, and with your typical nor'easter, and a nor'easter is just an intense area of low pressure that often happens in the wintertime. It's usually a cold core system. Well, it's always a cold core system. And they typically provide very strong winds. Check with Lee. They usually involve coastal flooding. Check. They also involve every now and again surge as well. Check. Reminds me of Groundhog Day when Bill Murray, see, I'm already going on that tangent. You remember when Bill Murray's talking about whether he likes Andie MacDowell or whether her perfect guy, and he's like, yeah, that's me, check, check, check. Well, this has all the feels of a nor'easter. Now, let's not minimize nor'easters. They provide, sometimes there's damage, there's often flooding, there's always power outages. There's a ton of trees in the Northeast, which can cause power outages when they go down. So all of that is going to happen. But Before we get into the specifics on Lee, I do want to give you guys a little bit of a brief overview, a Tropical 101 overview, all right? And our Floridian folks know this well. We've gone over this many times. But possibly folks in the Northeast not paying nearly as much attention because, you don't normally deal with it as often as folks in the South do. And again, everybody who's checking in on social, thank you very much. Nice to see you. We normally do our hellos, but we do have a lot to talk about tonight in a lot of different tropical spots. So there are the names. We are at Lee. We have Margot out there as well. Remember that nonsense that was on social media about 4 or 5 days ago? Oh, Margot is going to do this, and Lee is going to do this, and it's going to turn into a storm the size of the Atlantic. Just look. Yes, there are a lot of armchair meteorologists out there that love to throw that one out there. And we tried to, which I repeat, and you guys know me on this. Look, whatever your trusted source is, I would love if you turn my way for some trust from time to time. But all I'm saying is as stuff goes through your phone, you're sitting there in bed, you're on your bed, scrolling through your phone. And then you see all this stuff pop up. Oh, Cat 6 hurricane. Oh, a hurricane the size of the Atlantic. Oh. Ignore it, all right? Pick your source and stick with your source. Pick it and stick it. All right, there you go. So, talk about picks. You believe the Jets saw 3 picks of Josh Allen. Holy cow, same guy. I'm not, you're already seeing, I'm not a huge Aaron Rodgers guy. I never have been. His off the field and the way he handled contracts and stuff, I wasn't real thrilled with. But I feel bad for the guy. I mean, I watched Hard Knocks like a lot of y'all did, and I mean, there was just a feel. There was a feel to this upcoming season, and with Zach Wilson there, I don't see how that's going to happen. But you know what? Never know. Stranger things have happened. No, they probably haven't. All right, so there's a look at the names again. We have got Lee, we have got Margot, and there's a system out in the far Atlantic that will be Nigel. Then Ophelia, then Philippe, Rena, Sean, Tammy, Vince, and Whitney. And then we'll see whatever else happens after that, if there is. So, you've all heard we're in an El Nino. We know this, all right? El Nino is a large area of warm water off the coast of South America that has a big impact on trade winds. Now, in the wintertime, interestingly enough, it creates a stormier pattern for the South. You see that red arrow? See that subtropical jet? That subtropical jet is coming into play with Lee as well. That subtropical jet is going to scoop him up to an extent and help move it north in more of a quick fashion, accelerating for a period of time before it starts to slow down. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Anyway, we're in a pretty bad drought across part of Florida, believe it or not, even though we had a hurricane. And so I think in the wintertime, a traditional El Nino, we typically have a wetter winter and a stormier winter. But in hurricane season, those upper level winds can be really difficult in storms trying to form. But because we've been talking so much about how warm the water is, that has been the great equalizer so far this season. So, talking about hurricane formation, this is the process, all right? You've got unstable air. As the air rises, the temperatures cool, it leads to convection, and you start to get a thunderstorm. Well, all you've got is rotating thunderstorms off the coast of Africa, which is really what a hurricane is, a giant rotating thunderstorm. As it taps all that excess energy from the warm waters of the tropics, you cannot have a change of wind direction moving with height. If you do, that is shear. And that is something that El Nino can cause. If you get that shear, you often limit development. And again, that 80-degree water temperature is typically the magic number. All right? So there it is. You get 80-degree water temperature, and in this case, the water temperatures have been closer to 90. A lot of energy in that, and all of a sudden, you get that rotating thunderstorm that turns into a depression. A tropical depression or a tropical cyclone, which a lot of folks don't understand. A tropical cyclone is just a generic term for any area of low pressure, tropical characteristics. It is not a scary term. It is not designed to freak anybody out. It's a meteorological term. All of these are tropical cyclones. And you'll see that from the Hurricane Center. Winds less than 38 miles an hour, but you have a distinct circulation, you have a depression. If those winds go up from 39 to 73, you then have a tropical storm. If you then get the winds greater than 73 miles an hour, you then have a hurricane. And those hurricanes are broken down into 5 different categories, not 6, in spite of what was on TikTok earlier on this year. There are not Category 6 storms. I mean, look, you could make the argument. I'm not going to even deny that. You could make the argument that if the scale continued, maybe 180 would be a Cat 6. You could, I mean, it's a valid argument. It is. But it doesn't exist at this point. And until the NHC or the WMO or whatever, you know, changes their mind on it, we top out at a Cat 5. So there is no Cat 6. Anyway. So, as we look at that circulation, this is a look at the prime time of when we are in hurricane season, and that would be now. A third of all named storms happen in September. October, there is often a little bit of an uptick as well, and that is often a Gulf storm. In fact, look on this graph here. You see the little uptick in the middle of October? I will circle it for you in case you don't see it. Right there. See that one? That is an uptick that often happens from a Caribbean or a Gulf of Mexico storm. If you're watching from the Northeast, that's probably not going to be your concern. If you're watching from Florida, that most definitely would be your concern, because those are the ones that we are most vulnerable to here in the Bay Area. So, this is important when it comes to what's happening with Lee. More than likely, I would say the odds are 80 to 85% that you will be in the northwestern quadrant of the hurricane. The front right quadrant, the northeast quadrant, is usually the maximum hurricane impact with surge and with wind. This storm is different from most, and we'll talk about that coming up as well. The winds are currently extending. Hurricane force winds extend 125 miles out. And I'm going to give you a comparison with Idalia. Idalia, hurricane force winds extended out 20 miles from the center. That's it. And the worst of those winds were 3 or 4 miles out. So when there was a hurricane warning for the Gulf Coast, I'm like, do the math, people. If hurricane force winds are 25 miles out and this thing's 150 miles offshore, how in the world are we going to get hurricane force winds? Answer, we're not. And we didn't. So you got to look at all the pieces of the puzzle. And in this particular storm, hurricane force winds extend 120 miles out. Tropical storm force and expanding, by the way. They will get wider as this storm goes more extratropical. And even more importantly, tropical storm force winds, 39 to 73, extend 240 miles out from the center. All right? So let's say you're going to be in the northwest quadrant if you live anywhere from Jersey to Maine or Nova Scotia, which I believe you will be. All right? Typically, you will get significant surge. Think about it. As the storm is coming in from your east, counterclockwise flow, bringing water in around it from the north, and places like the Bay and Cape Cod, areas that are northward facing, bays that are northward facing, that water will pile up. And even if the storm is 150 or 200 miles offshore, I still think there are going to be some surge issues, as there are with strong nor'easters. This is going to be a recurring theme as we go through this. Now, you can argue that this storm right now is as strong as Sandy. It's a totally different type of storm. Totally different type of storm. Sandy was more of a hurricane all the way up until landfall. Yes, it did go extratropical, but it still had more characteristics of hurricane than anything else. So when landfall occurred, which, by the way, was farther west, well to the west, you had a much more significant impact. That will not be the case here unless there's a drastic change to the west. It's not impossible. I'm going 80-20. In my opinion, 80% likelihood that this stays well to the east of the New England coastline. 20% chance it could get pushed back. It could kind of hit a roadblock is what would happen. A trough is going to scoop it up. But let's say that trough's a little bit faster and doesn't have a chance to catch Lee as much. Then it's going to get stuck. And if it gets stuck over colder water, it is going to weaken and slow down. More rain. Less wind, more rain. Again, we'll get to that when we look at models. We're trying to cover all the bases for you. All the bases, all right? Jennifer, so in other words, a bay that is open north. Like there's some bays that are open from the south. There's some bays that are opening from the east. If you've got an area of water that feeds in from the north, a northerly flow will cause a greater surge. Back right, you get more wind. Back left is typically the weakest part of a hurricane. But again, this one is going to be different. Here's your scale. It doesn't really matter. I mean, this graphic shows you the difference between a Cat 1 and a Cat 2 and a Cat 3. By the time this impacts the East Coast, anywhere from Maine to Jersey, it may still be a minimal Cat 1 hurricane, but it will be so far offshore and the wind field will be so expanded that it's not going to be your traditional hurricane. And again, as you look through the different categories, I think this is obviously scary, but it's a moot point because there goes the house, because it's not going to be an issue, anything like this. There's just no way this thing cannot weaken because it's going to be going through all of the colder water and the shear that it goes through. Now, look at the storm surge. This is something I do want to address with you because for folks up north, you may not know this. When we start talking about surge, if there is a surge issue for part of the New England coastline, it is not just a rise of water. Surge is a rise of water. It is not rain. It is not flooding. It is the actual push of the ocean water. The storm pushes that water, and it hits a concave area. Potentially, water pushes into that concave area, and the water has nowhere to go, so it rises. All right? So not only do you have the water rise, but you also have the waves on top of the water. Now, there were people talking about Lee when they were hyping it. Oh, you're going to get 100-foot waves on the coast. No, you're not. Now, The Perfect Storm, if you ever saw the George Clooney Marky Mark movie, Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, he was the first mate. I think George Clooney was the captain. It's a true story. It was exaggerated to an extent in some ways, but the storm itself and the impacts of the storm were very real, and the crew was lost from that boat, that fishing vessel. So anyway, this storm will have a big impact on the waves out there. And way offshore, maybe you're going to get a 60-foot waves. But the people who are saying, oh, you're going to get 100-foot waves on the coast. No, you're not. No, you never were. People just like to focus on worst-case scenario. This drives me crazy. We talk about this all the time, all right? There is a worst case. There's a best case. We all know in life it's usually somewhere in between. It's just the way it usually works out, all right? So the worst case scenario would have been when this thing had winds of 180 miles an hour, moving on shore at that. But storms don't usually do that. They can't maintain their strength that long. I mean, that was 10 days out, right? As I warned you, I do go on tangents, but at least they are weather-related tangents. All right, so there's a look at, my point was, remember, it is not just the water rise, it is also the waves on top of the waters. That is the other thing, okay? Not just the water rise, it is also the waves. All right, let's talk about Lee. All right, so Lee right now has winds of 115 miles an hour. As I mentioned, hurricane force winds extend 125 miles out. Tropical storm force winds extend 240 miles out from the center, okay? And that is very important because when you have a track, you don't want the 7-day. What happened to my other graphic? Let's go, let's get rid of it. Well, let's just advance past the 7-day. I thought I stacked this show so perfectly, and look what I did. I messed up the one graphic. All right, so when you have a track, and look, I know they always say, don't look at the white line. I get it. But people are going to look at the white line because it's just human nature. And the white line is important, usually. All right, so there is the white line. That's where the center is supposed to go. In reality, it could go all the way to the west or all the way to the east. But why is that less important with this one? Well, we just talked about it. It's less important because tropical storm force winds cover the entire cone of uncertainty and even farther to the west. Okay? So I was talking with somebody who was trying to school me, a retired woman. Well, I'm not sure if she's a meteorologist or not. I didn't think so. Was trying to school me saying, oh, there's a front that's going to come in and kick it off to the, well, yes, there is. There's also the jet stream. But the point is, you don't see this cone in northern New Jersey, but they're still going to get tropical storm wind gusts because of the massive size of the tropical storm force winds. Now, let's recap. What other weather feature has a very large envelope of winds, has coastal flooding, some surge, and that envelope of winds can easily be 350 miles wide? The answer? A nor'easter. So, the only way that I think the forecast for this storm would be worse than what we are thinking is if it does miss the jet, miss the trough, and start to go significantly west. Two things would happen. One, it would not have time to weaken as much before making landfall. And two, landfall would occur more to the west in a higher populated area. So that would be our worst case scenario at this point. You would still have a weakening storm. It'd still be a Cat 1 hurricane, but it would be significantly worse. So, all right, Dennis, riddle me this. What do you think the odds are? Let's just look at the spaghetti plots right now of the latest 18Z models and see, do we think there's going to be that turn to the west? Thanks to Tropical Tidbits, Levi Cohen, in my opinion, one of the brightest tropical meteorologists I've ever known. I don't know him personally, but the guy's brilliant. And his website is tropicaltidbits.com. That's where I got this spaghetti model from. Look at the consensus on that spaghetti model. It is extremely tight. So, it seems very unlikely that you are going to have a dramatic change to the west. It just does. Our global models are all on board now. Let's talk about that, all right? And then we'll talk about specifics. We'll talk about specifics of what we think is going to happen in individual spots. Let's start with the Euro. Tomorrow morning, there's the Euro. There's Lee. There's Margot. It's going to turn into a giant hurricane. No, it's not. There's Margot. There's Lee. All right, let's go to Thursday morning. There's Thursday morning. There's Friday morning. Saturday morning. I'm going to call up a northeast map as well because it looks awfully close, but it isn't as close as it looks. Saturday morning, Sunday morning. Let's look at the difference from the GFS to the Euro. Here's the GFS. Tomorrow, hashtag cha-ching. Tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, Friday morning, Saturday morning, a little bit more to the east, Sunday morning. But let's look at the comparison. Here's 72 hours Euro, here's 72 hours GFS. GFS is a little bit faster than the Euro, but very similar in intensity. Let's go to the next stretch. There's the there's the Euro, there's the there's the GFS, there's the Euro. GFS is faster, but still pretty close. There is a ton of agreement here, folks. And my reason in saying that is while anything is possible, and I'm giving it an 80-20 possibility, in my opinion, you're going to see a storm that stays far enough offshore for the center to be offshore. But what have we already said? When those winds are going to be a much broader envelope than most hurricanes, and by then it'll be hybrid anyway, the envelope of winds will cover that area anyway. So it doesn't really matter where the center is because it's going to be more like a nor'easter, a broad area of wind. Now, you can argue the winds might be a little bit stronger closer to the core, sure, but you're still looking at winds 45 to 65 miles an hour along the coast. That is the current thinking right now. All right? Based on the forecast position at Friday and Saturday, that's when I think it's going to be. All right? So let's look at the Northeast map. All right, this is the GFS again. Look where it is. All right? Now I'm going to take this full so you can see it better. If you're watching on the streaming app, clearly I'm not going to get through all this for you. You have to watch me on Facebook. There is 96 hours. So the center is nowhere near the coast. Oops. I'm going from map to map. But it's close enough that there's going to be strong tropical storm force winds from the Cape, Martha's Vineyard, Boston. FSU is taking on Boston College at noon on Saturday, allegedly. We'll see if they get that game in. That's the Euro, that's the GFS. The GFS is much farther to the east. GFS is much farther to the east. The Euro is closer to the coast. But let's use the Euro at its closest point. And by the way, the Euro is the farthest west model right now. If that were to be the case, you would probably have 65 to 80 mile an hour winds at the Cape and Martha's Vineyard. This is the farthest west of any model that we're seeing right now. That is not saying it's not right, because you guys know my love affair with the Euro. I cannot quit the Euro. Flat out, I can't quit the Euro. It has been my model forever. It's the most accurate model historically on the face of the earth. And it clearly just nailed Idalia more than any other model, and it wasn't even close. So I'm not going to write off the Euro. But my point is, we're so used to fixating on that center line. In this storm, you don't, because the winds are going to be more uniform, even 100, 200 miles out. Now, I will tell you, if this is right, if the Euro is right on this more west track, you're probably going to see Cat 1 winds from Cape Cod, all the way up toward coastal Maine. Rhode Island, probably 65, if the Euro is right. But remember, the Hurricane Center's track is well to the east of this. So we're going to have to see if the track goes back a little bit more to the west. All right? There is the Euro. There's the GFS. GFS is the American model. The Euro is the European model. Obviously, the Euro is much, much closer and a stronger storm, too. 980 millibars. You know what? That's a Cat 1 hurricane. That's a Cat 1 hurricane right there. So if the Euro is right, I think you probably would see minimum sustained hurricane force winds, but I think it's probably on the fringe. I think it's going to be more east than this, to be honest. Because it's fun, Courtney. Weather is awesome. All right, so let's talk real information for this here, all right? Here's your spaghetti models. Look how far east it is. Let's look at when we think tropical storm force winds are going to arrive in these areas. If you're watching on our streaming app, you've got another 40 seconds. You can watch on Facebook. I am going to talk a little bit more about long range stuff. I will give you a little glimpse. If you look, where is it? Where? They're right here. This model, this is trying to predict Gulf of Mexico development in the first week in October, as well as stuff on the east. I would turn to Facebook. We do have stuff to talk about on this, but we're going to finish with Lee first. How about that for a tease? Oh, my. All right, let's get back. Where were we? We were on winds. All right, here we go. See you, streamers. Okay, so the streamers are gone. Okay, so there is your time frame. Look at where you live or where your loved ones or your friends or your family or whoever live, and you can see where these winds are. Now, let me tell you something about this. The Hurricane Center said flat out they think that they are underestimating the extent of tropical storm force winds to the west. In other words, they think the western side of this will be expanded, and so do I. I think it will be because the models, not the models, this particular image does not take into account how ridiculously wide this swath of tropical storm force winds is expected to be. Rob, thank you very much. All stars go toward the Children's Miracle Network. We are back on our donations to Children's Miracle Network. The last week we donated to the American Red Cross Hurricane Relief Fund. But all stars donated go toward Children's Miracle Network, as do all of our Etsy sales, and our Rule Number 7 merch also go to Children's Miracle Network from now through Christmas. So, as I said, this is a look at when tropical storm force winds are supposed to arrive. In my opinion, you just want to go ahead and expand this out to probably about there. Maybe not quite so far west, Vermont, maybe there. If it were me, thank you, Wanda. If it were me, this is where I would extend the tropical storm force winds. The timing is the same, east-west, but I think the western flank is going to be more over land. And that isn't even if it goes more west. If it goes more west, it's clearly going to be more over the land. So between Friday night 8 p.m. and Saturday morning 8 a.m., you're going to include most of southern New England, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. That's when the tropical storm force winds are most likely to arrive. Friday morning, I think you will get in, Kelly. And then from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., it extends into Maine and eventually into Nova Scotia. So that is the leading edge of when the tropical storm force winds arrive, okay? I think that's an important map to look at. Now, this is based on the Hurricane Center's track. Obviously, the highest likelihood of the intense winds are around the center. But as we said, I really, really think that this will eventually expand out to the west. And when it does, I think we're going to see areas like Hartford, like all of Rhode Island, picking up tropical storm force winds. You're asking about Maine on Monday? Yeah, by Monday, this will be over. This will be over. So I can go ahead and answer questions about this storm, and then we'll show the other stuff. Sunday morning flying into Rhode Island, Nancy wants to know. Yeah, I think you'll get in. Flying Hartford to Tampa Friday night. That's a close one. That's a real, I don't know how the airport's going to be on that one, Karen. That is a close call. You're going to, if this goes a little more west, I say no. If it skews a little more to the east, you might luck out. All right, Cape May winds. Are you talking about Cape May, New Jersey, right on the water? I would say probably on the low side, 40 to 50, 40 to 45 on the low side. Long Island. Again, based on the current track, Long Island looking at gusts of about 35 to 50. Gusts, not sustained winds. All right? That is what I think you will see. Gusts of 35 to 50. Saturday afternoon, Sarasota to Harrisburg, you'll be fine. Nova Scotia will be on Sunday. Memorial service Saturday afternoon, Hartford. It's not going to be nice. It's going to be very windy and very rainy and very nasty. LaGuardia, Saturday. New York is a really tough one. Here's my problem. I don't know what the criteria are for these planes to fly in and out in these airports. I just don't know. I can't give you airport. I just can't. I can give you winds for these areas, but I can't give you airport. Boston area. I think Boston's going to be looking at 45 to 55. Gusts a little bit higher. Think nor'easter. I'll say it again. Think nor'easter. When you have a track that looks like this, very solid consensus on our models. I still think it could go a little more west, but even if it does, remember, tropical storm force winds extend 240 miles out. Okay, Maryland goes all the way to Garrett County. So I'm not sure which Maryland you're talking about, but if you're just talking about even the eastern shore of Maryland, I think you've got nothing to worry about. 30 to 35. A lot of surf. That's about it. Friday, 5 p.m. See, I cannot answer. I just can't answer airports. I just don't know. Bar Harbor, Maine on Saturday. I think Bar Harbor's going to get 55 to 65. Think nor'easter. There will be power outages. Lots of trees go down. Sunday, it'll be over. You're okay. Maine, York Beach, Maine. Boy, these are areas I don't know. I will be honest. Geographically, I'm very challenged when it comes to northern New England. I worked in Providence. We didn't cover Maine. But the timing is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The worst of it will be Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. And Melissa, I would say realistically, you're looking at 55 to 65. Gusts higher. Those are sustained, all right? Gusts, I think, will be higher. Portland, about the same. Look at that. Look at, all of Maine is covered in this tropical storm force winds. All of Maine is covered. Saturday morning, Hartford, you're going to be lucky to get out. I just don't know the airport criteria. I will tell you winds in Hartford are going to be about 35 to 40. Cruise ship heading back from Nova Scotia on Friday and Saturday. I wouldn't be surprised if they get in on Friday early because they don't want to be out there on Saturday. Just inland, the Lowell area. Tina, yeah, the Lowell area, I think you're looking at winds of about 45. Gusts to 55. Think nor'easter. I know, right, Courtney? This has been a long track storm. Cape Cod. Cape Cod, I think it's going to be closer to 60 to 65. And gusts even a little higher. And I do think there will be some coastal flooding. And there could very well be some surge in Cape Cod too, Louise. Palm Harbor. Nothing. Palm Harbor is going to get some scattered showers if we're lucky. We need the rain. And I do think rain chances rise a little bit this weekend. North Jersey Shore on Saturday. Yeah, I think on Saturday you'll be fine in terms of the wind. Still breezy, 35. Southern Vermont, 30 to 35, gusts a little bit higher. Long Island, again, 35 to 50. If it goes a little more west, it'll be 50. If it goes more center, it'll be 35. Nova Scotia, it's going to be coming down, but 65 to 80. It's going to be weakening by then. Christine, you are correct. For Palm Harbor, it is a nothing burger. New Hampshire, again, eastern New Hampshire, probably 40 to 45. Gust a little bit higher. Western New Hampshire, not as much. Based on the current track. Pennsylvania, nothing. 0. Little breezy. No big deal. Not a thing to worry about. 1 inch of rain is 10 inches of snow, Mike. So if they get 10 inches of rain, that's 100 inches of snow. New Bedford, Mass, 45 to 50. 45 to 50. Boston on Saturday, 40 to 50. Gusts, probably sustained lower. 35 to 45, so gusts up to 50. Thank you, Cynthia. Again, all stars go to Children's Miracle Network. Vermont, I think I already covered Vermont. I'm still looking. Thank you, Pat. Eastern Connecticut. Eastern Connecticut is going to get 40, 35 to 40. There will be power outages. Rhode Island beaches, 45 to 55. Grafton, Mass, 45 to 55. Connecticut shoreline along Long Island Sound, probably 35 to 40, not as much. The surge is something I can't help much because I don't know the geography, the small geography areas. That's always the tricky part about surge. So that's something. And you know what? Tomorrow there'll be a surge map out, probably an experimental surge map, and I will actually, once there are warnings or watches out, they do issue that surge watch or that surge experimental thing, and I can show you what the surge will be on that. It's actually really helpful. Yeah, Courtney, it was crazy last night. You're exactly right. Someone made a donation for Children's Miracle. Thank you very much. That was Mike. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. New York City, 30 to 35. No big deal. Martha's Vineyard. Martha's Vineyard could be 55 to 65, gust to hurricane force. It could. So could Cape Cod, by the way. Northwestern Connecticut, the winds aren't really much of an issue, 30 to 35, definitely some squally areas with some heavy rain. Walla Walla, Washington. Thank you, Jeannie. I do think if the Euro is right and it starts to slow down a little bit, there will be more rain. Freshwater flooding will be more of an issue. The GFS is faster, less time for freshwater flooding. But surge, again, is ocean water, nothing more than ocean water. And that all depends on the nooks and crannies of the geography and the direction in which the winds are blowing. And that is impossible for me to answer. And not to mention, I just don't know the little bitty geography that in northern New England that I would in the Bay Area. Boston, again, 40 to 45, gusts maybe a little bit higher. Portland, Maine, about the same. Maybe 45 to 55, actually, in Portland, Maine. It's a little bit more to the east, so they'll probably see a little bit more. The climatological report, which exactly are you asking? I can't remember. Worcester. And I know how to say it because my first day working in Providence, I called it Worcester. It's Worcester. Worcester. It's Worcester. And Worcester is going to get 35 to 40. Portland, Maine, again, I do think 45 to 55. Gusts a little bit higher. A lot of trees issues. I think the power outages will be caused by tree branches down and trees going down. You know, again, I'll say this again. I knew it was going to happen. Worcester, Worcester, Worcester. Those are the comments. Hey, Jay. No, Jay's not here. Jay's from I don't think he's from Woonsocket. I think he's from Rhode Island. I can't remember where, but somewhere, probably Providence. But I spent 6 months in Providence. I lived in Narragansett when Hurricane Bob was coming. Man, that was a bad time to pick to live up there. It was cold and it was miserable. Everybody says, oh, Newport, Narragansett are awesome in the summertime. Well, I wasn't there in the summertime. I was there in the wintertime. Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia. Do not know that area as well, but that could very well be closer to landfall. 60 to 65. Gusts probably up to hurricane force. But Narragansett is pretty. It was pretty even in the wintertime. And I'm out there covering the Hurricane Bob. I got zapped because I was holding a microphone and I was standing in a big old puddle of water. Zzz. I got zapped. I remember that one well. Maine, Western. Okay, are you talking about, is NB New Brunswick? Don't know. Jeff, how you doing? West Gardner, Maine. No idea where that is. Is that east or west, or north or south or central? So I'm looking for your comments. All right, well, okay, I'm just going to tell you, all of Maine is going to get 45 to 60. Less to the west, more to the east. 60 on the east side, 45 on the west side. Gusts will be higher. All right? And we'll talk more about it tomorrow. I got to show you guys this map. Got to show you this. I teased it earlier. All right, so this is a look at the next 2-week forecast from the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook, all right? New Brunswick. Yeah, I was right. Okay. Yeah, 45 to 50. All right, so this is September 20th to the 26th. Ironically enough, New England could be facing another storm. The majority of storms this time of the year that form in the tropical Atlantic will curve. Not all. He didn't say all. He said the majority of all tropical Atlantic storms that form from mid-September on will eventually curve. 80% of them probably curve, maybe more than that. All right? So when you see this graphic, 10 miles south of Augusta. All right, I got you. Yeah, I'm saying more like 45 to 50. Gusts a little bit higher. Okay? So the majority of these are going to curve. But look at the week of September 27th to October 3rd. All right? Not to mention, actually, look at the drier air in the Caribbean. El Nino is notorious for cutting off Caribbean development, which is good for Florida because a lot of times our biggest concerns are ones that form, you know, right here and go up. You know, they form right there and they curve up. All right, so drier air is good. This one will probably curve. Whether it curves early or late, too early to tell, but that is the following week. That would be Nigel, is my guess. You know what I think of in Nigel? You know what I think of in Nigel? And this is just me because I'm a movie buff. You ever see the movie The Devil Wears Prada? Great movie. I freaking love that movie. Literally one of my favorites. Nigel was the name of the guy who helped, you know, whatever the main character's name was. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Nigel, and she's like, Nigel, because she got Nigel convinced him to let her wear all the Prada and all the Chanel and all that kind of stuff. And then Anne Hathaway is walking around doing this incredible montage with the song Vogue on, and she's wearing all these different outfits, and it was pretty awesome. Love that film. All right, so anyway, I digress. He's like, what is he talking about The Devil Wears Prada for? I think it's a great movie. I mean, and what's her face from Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat, you know, was the other secretary. She was hysterical. Just a great film. Anyway, let's get back to weather. I told you. I warned you I do this. All right, so, all right. Stanley, that's right. Stanley, is it Tucci? Stanley, yeah. He was great in that role. He was absolutely awesome in that role. And he was from Rhode Island, I remember. I remember his character was from Rhode Island. All right, so anyway, let's get back to it. So looking at the week of September 27th to October 3rd, all right? This is well, first of all, let's talk about the word experimental. So at least it's experimental. But according to this particular forecast, what happened? What happened there? It's all going to go black. Now, according to the global tropics, it's from the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center. You have two areas that we're looking at. One in the Gulf. Now, this is an interesting thing because they're not sure whether it's going to form here or form here. If it forms in the Pacific, it's going to go west. If it forms in the Caribbean or the Gulf, it'll go north. So obviously, you see something like this for the Bay Area, that is concerning. Then you also look at another area that potentially could be concerning because look at the difference. Look how this elongated ellipse goes more into the Bahamas, whereas this one goes north. See the difference? This is next week, the curve we're talking about, but the following week, maybe not so much. So the first week in October could be, you know, a little more tricky, I guess. That's something we're gonna have to look at. All right, what Emily Blunt, that's it. Loved her. Oh, she was, let me tell you, that is, okay, I don't know about you guys, but that's one of my movies. Like there's some movies that I turn on, that it's on cable. I still have cable. If it's on, I will always watch it. Edge of Tomorrow / Live, Die, Repeat is one of them with Emily Blunt. Devil Wears Prada, Emily Blunt, also one of those movies, and The Water Boy. Talk about a diverse, yeah. I will always watch The Water Boy and My Cousin Vinny. Identical. My Cousin Vinny might be my favorite. And then Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow. Love that movie. Love it. Kept waiting for a sequel. They never made it. Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. And Devil Wears Prada. And there's other ones too, but those are four of my keepers. All right. Mr. Coach Klein. That's right, Bridget. Oh, my heavens. I do love that movie. Yeah, Anne Hathaway is the main character. I think her name's, what is her name? It's really tragic because I almost know that movie by heart. I watched it so many times. What's her character's name? Oh, Serendipity is a good one too. Yeah, I know. I shouldn't admit that I like it, but I do. That's not one that I'll watch all the time, but I do like Serendipity a lot. Because John Cusack is hysterical. Just such a great actor. Love the guy. Andrea. Oh, my gosh, that's right. Andrea. That's right. My name's Andy. Doesn't she go by Andy? Andy, that's what it is. Yeah. Tanya said it. Andy. Yes. Yeah, Andrea. That's no. But she didn't call her Andrea. What'd she call her? At the beginning of the movie, she called her the other girl's name. Oh, and she's like, no, that's you. Oh, I can't remember. It's really tragic. Ferris Bueller is a classic. It wasn't really one of my favorites. I don't know why. It is a classic. And I love, what's his face from War Games On? Michael, why am I going brain dead? Why can I not remember these? All these characters. Matthew Broderick, that's it. Love Matthew Broderick. Oh, now you guys are just coming up with the movies that you like. Fletch, yeah, that's a classic. Bueller, yeah, it is a classic. And the girl from Dirty Dining is his younger sister. Dirty Dining, that's Wendy's. Dirty Dancing. Dirty Dining. Yeah, it's the younger sister. So Twister, oh, you guys are just doing the whole movie thing now. Yeah, Twister, I mean, come on, it's one of my faves because it's a weather movie. Even though the scene where Helen Hunt's dad got sucked out of the storm cellar, all right, that would absolutely never happen. Never happen. That is nonsense. You're in a storm cellar, the tornado is not going to pick you up and pull the top off and have her dad die. That ain't going to happen. So they kind of lost points. They are making a sequel, by the way. Did you know? It's called Twisters. Not necessarily an original name, but they are making a sequel called Twisters. Yeah, Christmas Vacation. You guys know me. I'm a Clark Griswold wannabe. I will never reach the greatness of Clark Griswold, but I can try my best. And my Christmas display is my homage to him. It's a true story. Yeah, it is. Christmas Vacation is absolutely one of my favorites. I mean, it definitely is. So, all right. So, yes, back to weather. Nigel will be turning north, Carol. But, will Nigel take a track similar to Lee, where that northerly turn is closer to the East Coast? It's way too early to tell. Nigel doesn't exist. However, most of the models are bringing a turn rather quick. Here's why that happens, all right? What causes a storm, a hurricane or tropical storm in the Atlantic as it's coming to the East Coast? What causes it to turn? A front, a jet, a trough, all of the above, right? Well, in September, mid to late September, we often see fronts, cold fronts, jets, troughs. We get those a lot. How many of those do we get in August or early September? Not as many. So it is more likely that a ridge will hold strong in August into early September and not allow a curve. I mean, we've told you 11 billion times, it's all the positioning of Bermuda highs. It's all the positioning of high-pressure ridges and whether or not it allows a curve or whether it drives a storm into the East Coast or whatnot, right? Well, in the end of September, you're going to get a lot more troughiness, which will often weaken that ridge and allow that storm to curve to the north. Now, ironically enough, we've had a really troughy summer for the eastern third of the U.S. We just haven't had storms coming in. But we've had a ton of troughs, a ton of troughs. FSU, yes, people have been asking me about FSU, Haley. Now, I do not know what criteria they would cancel that game, but I think Boston on Saturday, 12 o'clock kickoff, I think there's going to be a lot of wide right going on because the winds are really going to be blowing. So wide right, I don't want to rub salt in the wound. My son goes to FSU. But I'm just saying there will be wind 35 to 45 in that game. So if you can put a bet in right now, bet the under. Just telling you right now, if you can get a bet in on that game, bet the under because it is going to be really difficult to move that ball with that wind blowing the way it's going to be blowing. So there you go. Take my expertise and profit from it. Okay. Let me see. What is Andrew saying? Andrew likes to mock, but let's see what Andrew's saying. Oh, Andrew wants to ditch the 7-day. How should I know? No, I will be honest with you, Andrew. That drier, cooler air is coming in. The difference today is potential low pressure developing in the Gulf to our south. All right? Andrew kind of has a chip on his shoulder, but it's okay because Andrew does really good work for the community. So we like Andrew in spite of his wanting to ditch the 7-day. So that front is going to get close. And matter of fact, Andrew, since you asked, all right, look at the 10-day computer forecast. All right, let's do this for Andrew. All right, everybody, let's be nice to Andrew because he does do really, really good community service work. He really does. Even if he's kind of turning into a little bit of a pain wanting to ditch the 7-day, but that's okay, Andrew. All right, here you go. Here is the long-range computer numbers. See early next week, Andrew? That is that drier air as what happens with Lee. What's going on with Lee is going to swing some drier air around the backside. The question is it going to make it all the way down to Florida? A little dicey. The other question is, will low pressure really develop in the eastern Gulf over this weekend? That is always a tricky forecast because it does not exist yet, right? When a low pressure system does not actually exist, it makes it a little trickier. Lee, you see it. Makes it a lot easier to forecast something when it really does exist. Predicting the future is hard. Anyway, okay. Portland, Maine on Saturday morning. Let's get back to that. Let's get back to this map. There it is. All right. Portland, Maine on Saturday morning, you will have tropical storm force winds. Flying out, Candace, it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one. Again, I don't know the criteria for those airports, but they're going to get tropical storm force winds. So if you were to pin me down and say, Dennis, I need an answer, I would say you're not going to get in there on Saturday morning. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope you get in. Okay? This Saturday. That would be this Saturday. By Sunday, it's gone. You got nothing to worry about by Sunday. Okay? First week in October. Oh, you're driving cross country to California? Crystal, that is awesome. That is a fun trip. The Portland, Maine issues, Veronica, are only Friday and through Saturday night. That's it. Then you'll be good. Okay. I'm waiting for Andrew to respond. Andrew, where'd you go? Would I go to Boston this weekend for the game? Oh, Haley. Now that is a tough question. I don't like to give advice for people when they have to spend their money and their money is impacted directly on what I'm saying. But if there is a game, it is going to be a nasty day in Boston. All right. Would I go? Me personally, I like hurricanes. I like to chase hurricanes, so I would go because I would like to be out in the middle of it because that's what we do. But if I were you and you want to go watch FSU play BC and you think it's going to be fun to go to New England in the fall and maybe see some leaves changing and have some chata and all that and have a lobster roll, I don't think it's going to be a good weekend. I think it's going to be a terrible Saturday. Terrible. Windy, raw, rainy. That is what I think. Okay? Candace. I'll say your name again. Candace. All right, so let's see, what else? Will Long Island get any impact? So, Lisa, that is a good question. I think Long Island's going to get some rain. I think Long Island is going to get winds of 35 to 40. Not a big deal. Maybe some higher gusts. Think nor'easter, but on the weak side of the nor'easter. Again, all you got to do, here, you know what I want to do? Let me show you this. Stand by. This actually might be interesting. Might not be, but it might. All right, lobster. Okay. All right. Where'd Andrew go? I'll be doing this. Yeah, I'll be covering that. Okay, Kim, yeah, I will be here tomorrow, and I will be here Thursday, and I will be here Friday. Michael, nothing new. The models are the same. All right, I want to show you something. All right, let's do this. So let's talk about how far off this storm is going to be. Okay. So I'm going to look at the NHC track here. All right? Let's look at the NHC track, and let's measure how far this is going to be. All right, so this track takes it. I got to look at this. Hold on. Stand by. Where is it going to be? Oh, there it is. Wait a minute. Okay, so it's just south of that. When we do north, Saturday at 3 o'clock. Okay, so just south of that body. All right, perfect. All right, so it is going to be right about here, Saturday at 3 o'clock. Okay? Boston is 231 miles away from the center. Okay? Bangor, well, let's just do Boston first. Boston is 233 miles away from the center. Now remember, the line is going to go, it's going to go like from here. Yeah, it's going to pretty much be a straight line. Okay. Oh boy, this is reminding me of my days with tangents in geography. Oh my heavens. All right, so, except it's not going to be going down, it's going to be going up. So let's not try to confuse people. Let's do it the other way. So it's going to be like about here. It's going to be about there, all right? 3 o'clock on Saturday. Now, let's use our distance indicator. When it's latitudinally east to west from Long Island, it is, oh boy, it's even more than that. It's like 300 miles away. So yeah, I don't think Long Island gets sustained tropical storm force winds. I think they get gusty winds, but nothing too bad. Now, if the track goes more west and the Euro is right, then you would have an impact. But right now, just some gusty winds. All right? Now, Boston, okay? From here to Boston, it's like right at 240 miles, okay? Tropical storm force winds extend 240 miles out. And it is expected, the wind field is expected to expand, okay? So, damaging winds, nah. All right? Again, I'm saying this for most everybody. Think nor'easter. Some power outages from a nor'easter. Some windy weather, some trees, some heavy rain, some flooding. Think nor'easter. Now, again, if this track turns out to be more, you know, like this, which the Euro is showing, well, then all of a sudden, that brings in the entire, most of New England would be impacted by it, probably like that, obviously including Maine too. So there you go. So my point is, for the folks who are thinking about going to BC to watch the Noles, the number 2 or number 3 ranked team in the nation, depending on which poll you're looking at. My son goes to FSU. I'm a Penn State grad. I think we're number 7, maybe 6, can't remember. At the very least, it is going to be a miserable day. Miserable day. Do you want to sit in driving rain? Do you want to sit in 35 to 45 mile an hour winds and watch your team play in a sloppy, muddy field? Not muddy, but a sloppy field. They're artificial turf, I think. I say no. That's my take. I say no. But you know what? You're young. So it's an adventure. See, that's always my take on this stuff. I mean, it really is. My take always when I was younger is, oh, it's an adventure, it'll be fun, you'll have a great story. That is always my take. When Hurricane Idalia was coming to and the Hurricane Center had the center of that storm 7 miles from Tallahassee on the 11 o'clock advisory, I called my son. He's like, Dad, what should I do? I'm like, dude, it'll be a great story when you're older and you'll be able to say, I rode out a storm, because I didn't want him on the road. You don't want to be on the road when a storm's there. You want to be hunkering down, and you're away from the water anyway, so you had no surge to worry about. But again, that was my take. Look, you're going to have a great story. You're going to be safe. Hunker down, and you'll be fine. So thank you, Monica. So, Linda, you bring up a very good point. Nova Scotia, 65 to 70. I do trust the euro. I think the euro has done such a good job lately. I would be inclined to say, yes, it's going to be a little bit more to the west than what the GFS is saying and what the Hurricane Center is saying. And if that's the case, you're still only looking in Long Island at 35 to 45. You're so much on the fringe as it is anyway, you're fine. You're going to get some gusty winds. You're going to get some squally weather, but you're not going to get anything to worry about. The only way that would change is if there is a dramatic change to the west, and that is not even the euro isn't showing that now. I can show you the euro one more time. So here's the euro, okay, right here. This is Friday, Saturday, wait a minute, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This is better, you can see it better. Friday, Saturday. The euro is more west, but even still, not that much for Long Island. But if the euro is right, then areas like Cape Cod and Boston are going to get 65 to 75, as opposed to 45 to 50, which is what I'm saying right now. They might even get 80. That's if the euro is right. All right? Yeah, and Crystal, you're 100% right. I think the Cape is going to be one of the bigger issues, not just for wind, but for surge. A big storm not in terms of, well, it's a Cat 3, but it'll be weakening, moving that colder water and that shear going on. But size-wise, it's going to be a big storm. So it's going to cover a lot of area, and it's going to push a lot of water. So I do think there is going to be some surge issues in that. All right, so is there anything else? Anything else? Andrew, what is up with you? You're not wrong, but what is up with you? When did you get so jaded? Andrew, come on. I don't know. I'm sensing a jaded Andrew. That's making me very sad. You didn't just to be this jaded. All right. So anyway, all right. What else? I think that's about it. Any other storms heading to the Caribbean next week? Now, Pat, not the Caribbean. Caribbean really gets shut down during an El Nino year. But as I was showing a few minutes ago, where is it? Not next week, but the following week, that red hatched area is a 20 to 40% chance of development of a tropical cyclone. Both of which are noteworthy. One in the Gulf, obviously noteworthy, and the other one in the Atlantic, far more south than next week with Nigel. Yeah, so there's that one. See how it curves at the end and goes up? This one, it doesn't. So, but granted, experimental. Don't forget that. Experimental. All right, Rob, I'm driving my mom back down from Maine to Tampa on Friday. That's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. You'll be on 95 all the way down. I mean, It'll probably be okay. It's going to be a little bit windy and, in Jersey. But I think it'll be okay. I think it'll be all right. Anita, you are late. Anita, we're on Eastern Standard Time. Or are we still daylight time? We're on Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you, Allie. I appreciate it. Well, Priscilla, I'm trying. I mean, we don't have a lot going on here locally. That's good. We talked about what could happen in the next couple of weeks, but I know a lot of folks here have family and friends up north. So, I wanted to cover a little bit, and it's something to talk about. Now, Dave, that's an interesting question. That's an interesting point. And they could actually push it back a day, too. If they push it back on Sunday, they'd be okay. Saturday's the day that's not going to be real great. There will be a DPL tomorrow, Crystal. Absolutely, there will. I think October will be far more active than November, Brenda. Priscilla, this is my only one. Honestly, it's my only one. Are there any other stories? Okay, I got that. I think that's about it. Thank you, Christine. Yes. Nikki, yes. I think everyone should ride a storm out in that area unless they live on the water and they are in a mandatory evacuation flood zone. Otherwise, I think you're going to be fine. You ride out look, I lived up there during a couple nor'easters, got 2 feet of snow in the Cape, but you ride it out. It's windy, the power goes out, it's kind of miserable sometimes it's kind of fun, but a snowstorm, that's what you do. With these, unless you live in a mandatory evacuation zone, and I don't know that geography well enough to tell you where they would be. Tomorrow we'll talk about surge. I don't think the NHC has that on their page yet. Let me look. I kind of doubt they would. No, there's nothing on surge yet. I would think they usually would show that once they issue watches or warnings, and they're not anywhere near that yet. So that'll probably happen on Thursday. Maybe on Thursday there'll be a surge map. Well, that's another point, Linda. Yeah, I mean, they're just made differently. Watching from Colorado, going to Hartford this weekend. Yeah, you'll be okay in Hartford. Raymond wants to know how the weather will be in Orlando this weekend. Well, so that's a little tricky. Patty, you almost got me. That's a little tricky because if the low pressure system develops this weekend, there could be a little bit better chance of rain later Saturday into Sunday. It all depends on whether that actually evolves or not. All right? Okay. Thank you, May. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, I think that's about it. We covered it as well as I think humanly possible. We've been on for an hour and 10 minutes. We'll be back tomorrow. I would not expect much of a change tomorrow, other than a reaffirmation that this track is a little more set in stone, if you will. So that's about it. You guys have a great night. Thanks for stopping by. And we will be back tomorrow with our next edition of Denis Phillips Live. You guys have a great night. Stay safe.
Our southern weather is unpredictable.
We know you've seen a thing or two.
Like heavy rainstorms, extreme heat, and flying debris.
Your New South windows are custom built for your home and designed for extreme conditions.
That's why you need New South by your side.
Enjoy comfort,
Safety and security.
We install peace of mind with our lifetime guarantee. Superior Windows, factory direct.
New South proud.
Buy more, save more. Volume discounts on 4 or more windows.